Okay, so there we go. There's all the pre-shading. Probably a little bit different to how you've seen it before with it being in the green like that. But trust me, any type of pre-shading, as long as you're not going to go with, you know, something like a metallic underneath, something where it will change the top colour, as long as it's a flat type of finish will work well. You could use browns, greens, as I say, then you've got your blacks, things like that. But you could really work your way through any type of sort of tactical colour you like. Obviously, I wouldn't do things like reds and that if you're going to be doing lighter colours such as... you know, on this type of thing. So obviously the red will show through as being pink and things like that. So obviously just your greens, your greys, obviously your blacks, things like that work very, very well. Okay, so this particular one, with the Hawkeye, you have two basically paint schemes. You have the all-over tactical grey, which is your standard sort of colour of FS16440, which is your gold grey. As I say, if you could get away with using something like a Tamiya XF20, which is pretty close to it, just put a couple of drops of white in there to do this. That way, all over. The older scheme, or the two-tone scheme, was where they were white on the bottom, and it's quite a pretty marking, to be honest. This one we're doing the decals out of the box, which just calls for it, but obviously there is new decals around now, which do some nice stunning for the retro type of scheme, the older ones, and usually it's a nice swirly little pattern runs along there, and obviously if you look at the disc, there's a resin one of this one build as well, and that one's done in those markings. This one's going to be the all-over tactical colour. So for that, what we're going to be using is quite a nice one. This is the Guns, which is their Aqua range. It's H315, which is the good match for this one. It's a nice colour. Now, if you haven't used the Guns ones before, just allow them a lot longer to dry than you would perhaps Tamiya or Valero, things like that, because they do take a little bit longer. They're a little bit more smelly as well, but the great thing is they're as hard as nails. Once these things dry, they are almost scratch-proof, where a lot of other ones, obviously such as the Tamiyas, Valeros, things like that, they tend to wear through quite quickly. So it's quite a nice one, but it is a good colour match for this particular one. The one thing we're going to do slightly different, in a moment I'm going to underspray this particular area here, which I'll show you. Then we're going to spray the actual the radome holder at the top, and then we're going to fix it in place. Then we're going to come back. It's just that trying to squirt through all these legs will be a bit of a problem getting it on there. So what I want to do is get them in, and then if I've got problems with seals around here and it not liking a nice seams and things like that, then we can use a little bit of filler, do that, and then we can get on and spray the rest of it. So that's where we're going to start. Obviously, they do their own brand of thinners. You've got your Mr. Thinner, this one here, your Mr. Colour one. This is the one tank, it's 110mm. But just equally as well is the Tamiya X20A. So really, it's personal choice on whose thinners you want to use. I'm going to use their own one. Usual thing, we're going to make this a little bit wetter than we normally do. So what we're actually going to have is a little bit more thinners to paint ratio going on in this particular one. So we just pop that up there. Unscrew the top, he says, hoping to get the top off. Which the top is pretty well stuck on. So what we'll do, we'll just give it a good old shake. And if you have trouble getting the top off, what you can do, grab a bit of tip here. Lump of blue tack or your Play-Doh thing like this, wrap it around the outside, gives it a bit more grip, and then you should, hopefully, he says, trying desperately to get the lid off, get it off. If it won't work, pop it in some water, warm water, and it should do up just fine. And there we go, that's just loosened that off enough. I thought we was going to have a problem there. So there we go, have a good look inside, because their colours do tend to be like this one. They're very thin on the top, so they need a good old mix to wake these paints up. As I said, they're more synthetic than they are certainly acrylic or water based. So we give it a good old mix. We'll have a look through, and obviously as you can see here we've got lumps and gooey bits. Those have all got to go first. So good old mix with this one. Then what we can do, come along, our colour cup, as I said, 50-50 mix. It's quite a big area to paint with this one. And what we do, good old mix in the colour cup. If you have got an extractor and something like that, it's a good idea to have that one up and running for this, because as I say, it is very, very smelly. So There we go, happy with that. Okay, so what we do, we just flick the extractor on. Okay, as I said before, we're going to start spraying this area just down here. Bit. Check our flow, we're happy how it's coming out. As I say, it's a nice light colour, so we're just going to spray this top bit first. Just drying off now, cutting to air just to dry it back a little bit. Back in with the paint. Just turn it over, do the other side. Now it doesn't have to be perfect this, because obviously we'll come along and we're going to spray it afterwards. There we go, just like that, and then obviously we'll do this area here. Just worried about the legs, getting in the inside of the legs and the bits and pieces like that at the moment, not so much the main part. There we go, we just let those both bits dry off for a moment. Okay, and then we can come back and we can get that fixed on and then spray the rest of it. Okay, so as you can see, we've started spraying now, and we're just building it up nicely. As you see, the pre-shading's a little bit strong through this one, so we're just going to give it another coat and just knock it back a little bit. Until we're happy with it. And obviously what happens is it does come through again and again and again. So we've got here the one here. The wing sections, as I say, just the same. Already given this start of a coat just here, and obviously you've got your pre-shading just like that. So there again, we're just coming in, gently build it up over the top. Okay. When it's looking a little bit wet, just leave it off to one side just to dry. So we just pop that up here. We've got the aircraft itself just at the back here. We just move the camera around so you can see it a little bit. There we go, so we're just spraying that up here, going round, and when it's looking too dirty, we just give it a bit more right the way over. Same with the tails here, literally just coming along, giving them a light spray. See how they look when it's looking too dirty, just give them a little bit more, and just working right the way over. Right, okay, this is dried for about an hour, so it's nice and touchable. Now, as you can probably see here, we've gone along and we've put in the actual radome at the top. Super normal glue at the front. At the back here, obviously we've got these little marks. What I've actually done here is around here, I've just put a little bit of Mr. Surfacer. I'm going to let that dry, sand that off with sanding sponge, and then give it another light coat over it, and we can just airbrush those areas in. But what I didn't want to get is the thing of like having to shoot paint in from various angles to get that to work. So we can leave that to one side to dry just for a sec. In the meantime, we've come along, and as you might be able to see on this one, we've still got some of that green showing through. Fine on the bottom, but on the top we've got it there. You know, if you wanted to go for a sort of dirty panelled look, you could get away with this quite happily. I want to make it a little bit cleaner. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to give this another coat. So same thing again, about a 60-40 mix. Obviously 60% thinners. Okay, so what we do, we just get that down on here. Quite happy with that. And then we're just going to come along. I'm going to spray this. It'll flow through. There we go, just like that, very happy. Same thing you can do, I'm going to leave this quite blotchy actually around here, and obviously we're going to go around and touch this in afterwards around it. But check all your other little components to make sure you're all happy how they're painted up. And redo this leading edge of the wing. And this one, and just touch in some little areas, just like that, just to make sure you're happy. And generally go along. If you like them with the more dirty, mottly type of effect like this one's got, then fair enough, you're absolutely okay. But as I say, if you are using certainly the guns paint, give them a long time to dry off. So at the same time now, what we're going to do, we're going to go around and I'm just going to spray all the gear doors, all the bits and pieces, so everything's painted, and then afterwards we can come along and we can tidy up this area, which I'll show you, and then afterwards we can do all the black work for actually the anti-ice areas on the actual aircraft and any other panels that need to be different colours, and then we can mask up, get the wheel wells painted white and start moving on. Okay, so it's dried off now. Now, as you can see, we've got the main pylon added, and now you can probably see the reasons of not spraying it, putting it on then spraying it, because getting between would have been a nightmare and we'd end up flooding areas and making them very wet. Also, the thing is, it gives us a chance to try and blend these backs in a bit. They're not the best of fit to get in there, so what I've done, basically placed them in and then given them a sand around, a little bit of filler, Mr. Surfacer, just take care of little gaps, sanded them in a bit, and on here I've actually just painted it by hand over the top to sort of blend them in a little bit. Same thing, we can look around it, and if we think there's any pre-shading, like around the back here's a little bit too strong, we can give it a second coat just to fill those in a little bit, and generally just checking it all over to make sure we're all okay. Same thing perhaps on the some of the separates that we've done. Pre-shade's a little bit strong on that one, need to knock that back a little bit. No, but now it's totally dry, you can get a good feel for it to see exactly how it is, and then, you know, just generally having a look round. If you think, you know, that's okay, I'm quite happy with that wing, but perhaps this one's a little bit strong, now's the time to take care of them. So what we do, we just give this a second coat, and this will probably be the last time we'll be using this particular colour. So what we want to do is just basically go around and make sure we're all happy with all the areas. Pop around. So we're just using this one as the final touch up. And as I say, you might be able to see on the back here that it's a little bit stronger pre-shading, so we're just going to knock that back a little bit. Same with the underside. I'm just pinching it all back. Ooh, so we're all totally happy with how that goes. A bit of a drip occurred on there, so we'll just whip that off. Now it's a good example here of not to panic. Got a drip, okay, it's ripped right the way through the paint. Stain the paint, just give it a gentle rub off as fast as you can. Okay, and then just blow straight over the top of it. And what will happen is the colours will actually blend in together and it should all just re-melt. Might need a couple of coats over the top, but it's what you get for being a little bit complacent and doing it a little bit too quick. So there we go, we're just going to pop our way around this one, make sure we're happy. Any pre-shaded areas you think are a little bit too strong, and just go around and take care of those now. So quite happy how that all is. So we'll just stand that up there to dry off, and we can just take care of all the other little bits. So they say this is the last time we'll be using this colour paint, hopefully. So if you do think you've got some areas like gear doors, you haven't done them yet, and things like that, go off, have a look at them now, and then you can take care of them, and then that way we can then just move on with some of the black work. Okay, so it's all sprayed, all totally dry, very, very happy. We tidied up that small little accident we had at the side, so we just sanded it down and resprayed that bit, so no problem with that. So as you see, we started masking up to put this black work on. Now the thing with it is, you have actually got a decal that can go in the front here, but it's probably going to be a better fit to spray it. All I've used, very, very thin tape, this is Jammy Dog tape. I'm going along and run it round, and because it's very thin, it's very, very bendable, and you can bend it into nice curves and all the rest of it. So that's how we've done that. Same with the radome on the front to do those. So that can be sprayed up in a moment. We'll pop that out of the way. The other thing we've done as well is actually spraying the black work, which is this very nice stuff, which is the anti-ice work. Now, it looked quite a complicated way of doing it, but actually it's not that bad. All we do, we have our outer sections of the wings, got some 40mm Tamiya tape, but obviously you could use anything you like. Now it's not totally straight, there is a small little kink in it just down here. So what we'll do, we'll just, starting down this edge, we'll just line up with that first one. So we're just going to pop that down in there, straight up to the next one, okay, and then up. And that takes care of those, just like so. So we just tuck those in. Same on the other side. So we just do the same again. Top part in, then just curve around slightly. In with the bottom. I've slightly run off skew on that one, so just tiny little piece just to correct that. Little bit at the end. These end bits we don't want to paint either, so what we do, we just got some 6mm Tamiya tape, come along and we're just going to cover these ends up because we want them to stay nice and grey and not go black at all, because we've got the lighting section is going to fit just in there. So we can put those in just like that. And then what we've got here, we've got some 1mm tape, and then in between we've got these little panel lines running down here. We can simply just pop along, grab a long bit because it's easier to work with. Okay, pop it in between and then run it round there again because it's nice and thin, very, very bendable, easy to do. Same with the other bits. Now as we're doing this, the tail section has decals, so you could either do it via decals or you could actually do it paint it, so it's personal choice if you want to do it. We're going to do a bit of both. We use the decal as the actual main part. Now what we're doing here, the outer little edges, there's no rivet line on these outer bits and down here, but the actual anti-ice boots, which these are, don't run all the way to the edge. So all we do, we're just using a 1mm gap from the edge to run these in. So, and there again, because it's nice and bendy, it just really conforms nicely to the shape, and we can just bend it round just like so. Okay, so that's all in. Happy with that, how that is. We've got here some tyre black paint. The reason for using that, it's more flatter looking than the others. So if you were using just flat black, this one just got that sort of rubbery type of look to it. Let's work that up. Just doing the other side. Give a nice smooth paint job on this one. And then obviously the leading edge. Going from one side and sort of come in about a 45-degree angle. Just like that. So you can leave that to one side to dry now. Just pop that one up there, and then when you unmask you should end up with something like this, which gives that nice sort of rubbery type of look to it. And as you can see, we've got the edges which are uncovered as well, so when we come along with the lights we can pop them in and go through them with a wash and the usual bits and pieces we're going to do afterwards. It will really sort of bring those to life. So that's those bits done. As I say, we've got the nose section on the go here as well, so we're going to spray that in as well. So we just come in, and if you're a bit worried about overspray, you can cling film the rest of the model. And then obviously we've just got this nose section, so we're just going to be a little bit careful how we're going to come in. And there we go. So we just let those dry off, and then in a moment we can do really exactly the same to the underside areas. So under here, where we're going to mask up around these edges, and we can spray white in the wheel wells like that, and the nose one obviously, and then we can spray all the gear and in these little areas down the sides here as well to take care of those. But it's easier just to mask them up, spray them in. You could obviously if you want to do paint it, hand paint it, and then next after that we can come along and we can do the red areas where it's inside the flat parts and bits like that. So really sort of moving on. Once we've got those done, we can really get a gloss coat on and start with the decaling. Okay, so as you can see, we've got the tails. They're just sort of sat on here at the moment. They're not fixed in because they can come on and off. What you will have to do is sand them in slightly to blend them in, because they're actually the cup shape of the actual horizontal bit doesn't marry up with a vertical tail, so you need to take a little bit off there. But there we go, that's done. Another little bit we've done, you might be able to see, we've got the exhaust painted up. That's done by hand, just with the silver. A good colour for that is X32 or Citadels, using chainmail, something like that is a nice colour for doing those exhausts, front and rear. But it's one of those things, by the time you would have masked up and done the complex shape of it all and everything else, you might as well just hand paint it. It's so much quicker. Okay, so the next big thing we can do is the white work. Now, spraying white, I know a lot of people have trouble with it, so if I just give you a basic run through of the way I do it. When you come along to do it, if you're putting down white paint, obviously it's very, very thin, it's quite opaque, so what happens is that you put it down and obviously you get a lot of show through. And by show through, I mean if you've got darker colours in there, things like that, and it just doesn't look white. So the way I get around this problem, and I've been doing this for many, many years, and I explain it to people how I go about doing it, but they all sort of look at me like I'm silly. White paint, neat, straight from the bottle, straight in the colour cup, unthinned. Okay, and then basically, if I just show you on the nose wheel here, what we do, come along, check our flow, happy with that, then we just come in and spray it in. There we go, job done. Now the thing is, it's very rough, as you might expect, because it's unthin. Now if you wanted to make it more of a smooth glossy finish, all you do, next one you come along, do a 50-50 mix once that's dry and spray that on, a couple of coats after that and you're done. For instance, if this was obviously the older scheme where it's white on the underside, I do the same way, neat paint on, that covers it, and then afterwards I'll go along with thinner coats, and that way we get the nice smooth finish and a couple of coats of gloss over the top and it's job done. That way, as an average, I can spray white onto a model, probably 3 coats, one neat, 2 50-50 mix, job done, clear coat over the top, and that's it. That way there's none of this flapping around with, like, you know, having trouble with you know, bleed through, showing through, waiting a long time. Also, because it's neat, it dries pretty quick. Give it 10 minutes to dry off naturally, then come in and give it your next coat, and so forth and so on. So what we're going to do now is just very carefully pick out your line. So what you want to do, obviously we've got to do these end areas here. So what we've got here, some 18mm Tamiya tape. The reason I like to use Tamiya tape and nobody else's is really this stuff doesn't peel like everybody else's. If you put other people's tape on, you tend to get quite a lot of peel up. Doing it with this, we hardly get any at all. So what we're going to do, we're just going to put some of this on just to stop any overspray getting on too many areas. And then we're going to do this area just back here. There we go. And then what we can do, we can just spray this end in white, and we're just going to come in from the top like that. And because we're coming from the top, we've got no overspray, gets through to the underside just like that. So there we go, that's that end section done white. No problem about that at all. We'll do the same on the other side, and then what we're going to do, just down in here, we've got some 40mm tape, which we're just going to pop just down here. Okay, and a little bit extra just over the ends, just to mask up. And then what we can do, we can come in and spray this bay as well. Bay, done, no problem at all, no problem masking up and things like that. We'll do exactly the same with spraying white on these ends as well, so when we're showing, you know, there's no problem at all, we're all happy with those. Then we can get on with some red work, and by the red work we've got to put it on the flap areas, things like that. Then really what we can do, give it a coat of gloss, so it's ready for decaling, and then we can move on. Okay, so we moved it on a little bit. As you can see, we've actually started decaling, so I'll talk you through that in a moment. But basically, we've glued on the actual tail planes on now, and as you can see, we've actually got the markings on there, which is quite nice. The top walkways, things like that, just take your time, keep them nice and wet, and slip them into position until they all meet up, because they are a bit tricky. I left the actual tail planes, the centre ones, off of this for the beginning part. purely because I thought what I was going to have to do is actually come along and cut the decals, but the decals are in too, didn't have to do that. So at some point we can just re-put those on. Another little thing I did just down under here, you can probably see on the close-up, I've done this little heat plate. Now this here is because of this little guy. This little part here, which is the little air scoop, I think, for the auxiliary power unit, is going to come along, it's going to fit up with it. So really, it just makes it a lot easier for painting and things like that. And the other thing I did was just to paint the front end of that silver as well, so that takes care of that. As I say, started decaling or decaling the entire model. Quite straightforward. There's a few little things it doesn't tell you. The bits like walkway marks, you can put them in or you don't have to. Basically go along this top area, so you put walkways. They are separate actually on the decal sheet and you can work your way through. Basically, just a recap on how I do it. All we actually have is that I use Microsol setting solutions. Now 9 times out of 10 all I use is the red one, which is the Sol, which we just cut this out, I can show you. Which is this particular one here. It's very nice because what it does, it just softens the decal and makes it conform and bend in. Now these particular decals for this one are actually made by Cartograph, who are probably one of the world's best decal manufacturers there are, so you know they're going to be okay. They're perfectly in register. So they're very, very nicely done. They don't take long to soak either, so they've just got some warm tepid water. So that goes in like that. And then all we're going to do, we'll just put this one on the other side over here. So that one's going to go just in here. So as I say, we just wet the area first, checking obviously the location where it's going to go and how it's going to butt up and things like that. Just a bit of water on like that. This continues to soak a little bit, and then what you do is just try and push it around with your finger. If it doesn't move, just soak it for a little bit longer. Okay, and then all we're going to do is just let that white in. And hopefully it will just start to move. There we go, it's starting to slip now. As soon as it starts to slip, we know we're in business. As I say, wet the area, and then what we can do, we can just slide it off of the backing paper, doing this rather cat-handed, onto the model like so. And then all we do, because it's nice and wet around the area, make sure your finger's wet and the decal is, because if you've got a sticky finger it will stick to it. So then all we do, we check our references, how it's all going to line up and how it's going to be. So this one, actually when you look at the references, isn't a massive perfect match for it. So what it is, it's further back. Okay, and then half of it sits down. Okay, so we're just checking how it looks. And when we're happy of how it's all sitting and how it's all lined up like that, cotton bud, then all we do is roll it across. And what this will do is just push out the water and any air bubbles you've got going on there and all the rest of it. Because we've done this over a very nice finish of the guns paint, it's actually a glossy finish, so we don't have to worry about giving it a gloss coat. The thing is, if you haven't done it over a gloss coat and this is a flat coat, perhaps you've used Tamiya X20, something like that with a little bit of white, what you're going to need is a couple of coats of gloss on there. It will just make it all a lot easier to stick to, and as you can see on the camera it's quite shiny on this one, so that's always a clue. If it's nice and shiny, you're okay. Then all we do, come along with the Microsol, which is the setting solution with the red one, and we just brush this right the way over the top. Now it is going to wrinkle up and look horrible and nasty, but all you have to do is leave it. Just forget about it for about half an hour, come back and carry on. Then obviously what I tend to do is work my way around the model. Just make sure you don't touch it. If you touch it, stick your finger in it, it will just destroy the decal, because the decal is actually melting now. It's melting to the surface and everything else. You put your finger in it, nightmare. So just be careful how you handle them. Pick an area. Normally I start on one side and work my way around and things like that, and I just find it an easier way to work with. So just remember to put water on first, come along as we've done here. We can just pop that one in and just show you nice and quick on this one, and there we go. We can just carry on working our way round the entire model. So if we just get this one in and lined up, so when you're all happy, as I say, along with a cotton bud, just push the water all out, then you come setting solution and move on. So I'm going to carry on decaling the rest of it because it's a long old job on this. There's plenty to do. If we get any problems, I'll tell you at the end.